So I've been using the Samsung Galaxy S24 as I guess, tertiary phone right now. So not my primary, not my secondary, but my third phone-ish in the realm of what I'm doing here. Consider subscribing. It's now shipping more phones than Samsung, but around the world, and I guess even in this country. But I have to say that whatever they're doing works, and a lot of people seem to enjoy what they're producing. So again, if you're interested in this device, by all means, it's a good device. Go out and buy it. I would suggest that if you are a postpaid customer, make sure that you aren't paying full price for it. $800 is fine, but there are always ways to get it for less. If it's something through installments, that's cool. Even though it's a relatively new device, there are means to find used versions of it right now. Heck, this is the 256 gigabyte variant, and I got it for $600. So $200 cheaper than the cost of the base model had I bought the base model new. So I think at either another $50 or $100 to double that storage. And I even think right now Samsung was offering some promotions on their website to get some money off. So definitely, as I said, if you're interested in Samsung, get the phone. It's perfectly fine. I don't do all of those tests that a lot of these reviewers do. The cameras are fine. The screen is good. The under-display fingerprint reader works almost flawlessly. Of course, every once in a while, you might need to leave your finger there a little bit longer. But for the most part, you put your finger there and, it's almost immediate. Not to the point where I am no longer missing hardware fingerprint readers, but you saw how fast that was. That you can see the little indentation right there, and even when the screen is off, you can set it so that it's always ready to receive your fingerprint. So no complaints there. Volume of the speakers are fine. In my opinion, I like the volume and the sound of my Zen phone a little more than this, but I wouldn't have any issues with this if this were my only device. Charge speeds are fine. Again, to bring comparison to another device, right now I have my OnePlus 12R. Charge speeds on that are phenomenal. So it's almost not even a fair competition because of what OnePlus is doing to charge their particular devices. But yeah, no complaints here. What else can I say good? I'm not trying to make it sound like there's nothing else good about it, but I think Samsung has gotten to the point, like I said before, where it's just kind of rinse, repeat, tweak a little bit to show some improvement, and then put out a phone that's almost identical to last year's device. With that being said, I do have a few issues. And some of the stuff is nitpicky, but other things I think are not cause for concern, but definitely something that should be brought to the attention of the masses. And excuse me, and of course Samsung's aware, so it's not like this would be news to them. But I took a few notes, and I know some people might say, "Oh, you're just hating." No, I got my Galaxy Tab S9 here, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this. So I have nothing against Samsung, but sometimes I feel like some of the issues need to be, talked about. So the first issue I have is the refresh rate. Now, I need to be clear that I have never seen Samsung claim this, but I see reviewers all the time talking about it. And they talk about the fact that the Galaxies, all of them, have the LTPO display, which means they're able to go up to as much as 120 hertz and scale all the way down to 1 hertz. From what I've seen in my preliminary testing, which is nothing scientific, all I do is I go into the developer options, turn on the setting to tell the phone to display the refresh rate, and I have never gotten it to actually go down to 1 hertz. The lowest I've seen it actually go down to is 24 hertz, which, yes, is fine. And yeah, you get the range of 120 down to 24, and occasionally I'll see 60. But I would hate for people to continue saying that this phone is capable of doing something when, again, from my experience, I have not gotten it to actually do that. So when it's varying, it's going from 120 to 24, and that's in the adaptive setting for motion smoothness. And when I have it set to standard, it still varies from 24 to 60. So even that's not just a static refresh rate anymore. So either way, it's not going down to 1 hertz. Now, for my OnePlus 12R, this actually does go down to 1 hertz. Like right now on the screen, I have it displaying the refresh rate, and it's displaying 1 hertz. If I do anything to interact with it, it'll ramp up to 120. If I tap an app or something, 120 again. But while the phone is just sitting there doing nothing, with nothing really happening on the screen, it scales on down. And another thing, which I need to do more testing, because this is the biggest issue that I have with some of these variable refresh rates anyway, is that with previous phones, it would respond to what I am doing. So if I tap something, the refresh rate will ramp up. But as I'm looking at this OnePlus, it looks like it's responding to what's actively happening on the screen. So as objects are moving on the screen, it looks like the refresh rate is saying, oh, okay, movement is happening on the screen, not caused by the user, but movement is still happening, so let's ramp up that refresh rate. So I'm definitely going to do some more testing with both phones, but I got to give it to OnePlus that even on their 12R, so not even their regular 12, it looks like the refresh rate is able to ramp down to that 1 hertz. The second issue I have, which again, might not necessarily be Samsung's fault, might be the carrier's fault, is that it appears, and I wasn't able to find a way around it until later on, but it appears that if you get the phone from your carrier, you have to activate it. So you have to put a SIM card in it to finish setting up the device. So I did turn on the phone, went straight into Samsung's setup, was presented with the option to connect to a Wi-Fi network. I skipped that, and the next screen is telling me now to connect to a mobile network, and there's no option to skip that. So I went back, connected to Wi-Fi, and still was presented with that same screen of, okay, you still need to connect to a network. Great. All right. So once I put a SIM card, a T-Mobile SIM card in the phone, one that doesn't even have an active line of service associated with it, I was presented with a prompt telling me that the phone needed to restart. Once the phone came back up, I was presented with a T-Mobile splash screen, and then I was able to finish the setup. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't like the idea that phones or computers, because other companies do it too, need to be activated or need to connect to a network in order for you to actually use them. Because at the end of the day, you can do a ton of stuff with phones, tablets, laptops that have nothing to do with the internet. So the idea that you need to connect to a network in order to actually set it up, to me, is a bit problematic. Now, the other thing that I went ahead and did just to test, is this a T-Mobile thing? For AT&T and Verizon, I don't know. But to further test this, I went ahead, found some firmware for the S24 online, one that isn't associated with a carrier. So the firmware I can imagine you would get on the phone had you bought it directly from Samsung unlocked. And I flashed that firmware on, started the setup process, got to that same screen where it was asking me to connect to a network, and I was given another option to set this up in settings later. So I tapped that and I was able to finish setting up the device. So that right there lets me know that there's at least the option for you to progress with setting up the device without any type of network connectivity. However, if the carrier is forcing you to first have to connect to their network to activate it, to, I guess, check whether or not the phone's blacklisted, I don't know, whatever, that's problematic. Because I feel like even if the phone was blacklisted, you should still be able to set it up and use it as an offline device. And then, the moment you attempt to try to connect to a mobile network, at that point, if it says, hey, this phone's blacklisted, there's nothing you can do, or whatever, then I'd be okay with that. Phone's blacklisted, cool, but at least I can still use it as a means to stream YouTube or, literally anything. So I don't know. And even though as I'm talking right now, and as I mentioned, that SIM card that I put into the phone was not associated with an active line of service. I don't know if you do have a blacklisted device. Will something happen? If you're behind on your payments, will something else happen? No idea. All that just to say, yeah, I'm not satisfied with having to actually connect to a network to set up the device. So again, buy phones unlocked if you can. And yeah, as I did, if you're able to find the firmware online to flash it, and then now it no longer has any of those carrier apps or anything, or the carrier splash screen at when the phone's coming up or going down. By all means, I'd say go that route as well. Now the last thing that I would want to complain about, because I think of the first two things, not really that big of a deal, in my opinion. The refresh rate, hey, Samsung never claimed it. That's just other people claiming it. And needing the SIM card to activate it, yeah, that might not necessarily be Samsung either. That might be the carrier. But this is definitely Samsung. And as I was watching, I want to say it was Pocket Nail Daily a couple of days ago, thoroughly enjoy his channel, watch his stuff all the time. But at one point in time, during the course of his S24 review or short-term, whatever you want to call it, he essentially, if I'm recalling correctly, praised Samsung for the battery life in this phone. Now, I have a huge issue with, I think, all of that. So the first thing is him praising Samsung. Yes, that's his opinion. And as I always say, and I hope you would also agree, we're all entitled to our opinions. But as I'm looking at the battery capacity for the S24, it comes in at 4,000 milliamp hours. Now, that for an S20, insert number, non-plus, non-ultra, technically is good. Because last year, for the S23, the phone had 3,900 milliamp hours. And for the S22, it had 3,700 milliamp hours. So I'm not going back further than that. So by the standards of the previous two phones, yes, you do see some improvement in terms of battery capacity. But as I always try to look at the industry as a whole, 4,000 milliamp hours is terrible by a lot of standards. So whether it's a flagship or not a flagship, 4,000 is very small. And just so you're aware, the Plus, so the S24 Plus, I believe, has 4,900 milliamp hours. So that's a almost 25% battery size or capacity increase. And that's mind-boggling. And the Ultra has 5,000, which, cool, the Ultra does. But when I'm looking or thinking about 5,000, and yes, 5,000 is fine, okay? And before we talk more specifically about that 5,000 number, let's look at some of the competition. So on this screen, I'm looking at the Xperia 5 Mark V, the Asus Zenfone 10, and the OnePlus 12R, which is what I have over here. And coming down to the battery, let's start with the smallest. So the Zenfone 10 and the Zenfone 9 both have 4,300 milliamp hours. So I can imagine some people will probably say, oh, well, the battery in the S24 is what it is because of the size of the actual phone. And I gotta say, the Zenfone 9 and Zenfone 10 are both physically smaller than the S24 and all the previous S20, 23, 22, and 21, because the screen size of that is 5.9 inches. So Asus was able to fit a bigger battery into a smaller phone. Therefore, I'm more than confident that Samsung could have put a bigger battery in their S24. Now, looking at the Sony Xperia 5 Mark V, which again technically is a smaller phone because it comes in at 6.1 inches, not 6.2 inches, that too has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So what's the excuse, Samsung? I can't think of a reason aside from wanting you to spend more on one of the Plus phones, but from a technological standpoint, There's no reason that they couldn't have fit a larger capacity battery in the 6.2 inch display or a 6.2 inch phone. And then it's not even a fair comparison because it's a way bigger phone. But looking at the OnePlus 12R, 5,500 milliamp hours. So yeah, 4,000 milliamp hours is terrible. And just if we could do, in fact, I'm not going to go through it all because that'll take too much time. But Sony's mid-range phone, the Xperia 10, for a while has had a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. And when I say a while, I mean some of the versions going back have also had either 5,000 or 4,500. You have to go back a few generations to get down to the 3,000 and some change. But it looks like Sony recognized, why skimp on battery life? I mean, you can see a pattern of increase, and finally we're at this 5,000 point. And I think the Xperia 10, 5, and 1, I think all have 5,000 milliamp hours. So I think I started off this segment talking about Pocket Nail Daily and his compliments of the battery life. And I say, well, if it's better than last year's battery, cool. But by the standards of its competitors, it's terrible. And for the couple of days that I've been using it so far, I have to say that it's not horrendous, but I am not confident that even with my light usage, I would be able to get a full day out of this. I would be able to get a full day because of how I would use it, but I would not recommend it to somebody else who I would know would use it to a fuller extent. So I think that's it. Battery life isn't great. So I'm going to call it on that one.
So I wanted to include one more thing. I know I mentioned 3 issues that I'm having with the phone. Some are Samsung's fault, others are not. But the last one that I just remembered is the fact that Samsung apparently is not supporting the Qualcomm aptX Bluetooth codecs. And yeah, it sounds terrible. I was sitting here in the car, started driving, connected the phone to the radio, and I don't feel like I'm an audiophile, but I feel like I hear a noticeable difference between listening to the radio while using the Samsung compared to using my Zenfone 9 or the Pixel or, some other devices that I've connected to in the past. I don't include the iPhone because the iPhone also doesn't support those aptX codecs either. But yeah, I don't know why Samsung chooses to not support those particular Bluetooth codecs. I can understand them wanting you to buy Samsung products, and I think they do have some type of proprietary Bluetooth stack. But at the same time, there are going to be plenty of things that you will connect your phone to via Bluetooth that aren't Samsung products. And some of those products, Samsung doesn't even have a product in that competing space. So yeah, I feel like they're really doing their users a disservice by not supporting Bluetooth codecs that are kind of universally accepted. I would assume at some point, or at least I would have thought, that those Bluetooth codecs would have been kind of a part of base Android, but I can also see now why that wouldn't be a case, because there are plenty of things that Android goes in that aren't phones, so you wouldn't need, Bluetooth codecs. But yeah, just one more thing I wanted to include. Bluetooth, it could be a little bit better.
And actually, one more thing. And like I said in most of my videos and even earlier in this video, I know I'm super picky. But what I've done is I've connected the phone to a USB-C to Ethernet cable. I'm currently in a hotel, and sometimes I prefer to have a wired connection versus Wi-Fi. So right up here, it's letting you know, okay, we've detected an Ethernet connection, so tap to set it up. It's configured, all right? Now, that would be more things that you need to do than what would actually be required. But just to show that I'm actually connected to the internet, let's just go to right there. Okay, and I'm free to browse the web, no problem. But the one issue that I found, which again probably affects literally nobody, is that when you're connected to the internet via an Ethernet cable, I know that I have the latest version of Android or One UI installed right now, but I can't even access the server.
I mean, like you tap to download and install, which again, there's nothing new to look for, but it's not even reaching out to the server when I'm not connected to Wi-Fi. So I've turned off mobile data, turned off Wi-Fi, but I am connected to the internet. Now, if I unplug this and connect to Wi-Fi, I am connected till nothing else has changed. It reaches out. I came across the same issue with the Galaxy Tab that I have. So, yeah, that's just a weird thing. And yeah, sorry for all the fingerprints.
Again, even with the negatives that I've talked about, two of which I don't think are Samsung's fault. The other one, hey, it kind of sucks that they put a small battery in there. It is what it is. But overall, I think it's a pretty good device. So if it's something that you're interested in, by all means, consider buying it. And as I said sometime during the course of the video, don't buy it new. And if you do, installment plans or something. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of finding things used. So definitely consider finding a used option.